Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Joan here, and today's video is going to be about how I got my Leica M6. And it's a story that I think it's pretty cool to share, so this is why I'm making this video for anyone who cares. For me, I've always honestly wanted a Leica, any camera, as long as it was Leica. But I just also felt that I didn't want to just get it because I was gonna hop on the bandwagon and follow everyone else because it was such a cool camera to own, or that I just wanted to be a part of something that I not necessarily knew if I was all about. And so I also believe in timing, and to be honest, in my whole photography career, I never felt that a Leica would be something I necessarily needed. And to each their own. People can say like you don't necessarily need a reason, like you could just own one to own one. But for me, everything has meaning to be a part of my life, and I don't just get something to get something. And so it just never occurred. And it wasn't because like I couldn't afford one. It just never happened. The opportunity never arose for me to own a Leica. And background story, I've always owned Canon gear, and then now owning Sony, and just never occurred to own a Leica. I just know that to myself, whenever I would finally own a Leica, I would finally reach a milestone in my career. And so I gave myself a bucket list of at least at 30, being 30 years old, I would finally own a Leica, and hopefully a Leica M6 that was all black. And that was what I've always envisioned I would own. And someone who doesn't know anything about Leica, I felt like an imposter also, so I just felt that I needed to do research. I wanted it to just all come naturally for me to have this camera and not just have it forced to just have one and own one. So fast forward, I booked my trip to Tokyo, having the idea of if there was an opportunity given for me to get a good deal on this camera, then okay, fine, like I'll buy it. But if not, then no hard feelings, like I'm not gonna cry about it. And I didn't necessarily want any other camera. Like, you know, it'd be nice to have a Hasselblad or a Contax, but in general, I've always wanted a Leica M6. And to anyone who's just watching my videos just because they want to support and they don't know anything about photography, when it comes to different brands, Leica is like the brand. It's like you've reached a whole level, a different level, once you own one for some reason. And I'm not saying like just because you own a Leica that means you become an amazing photographer. No, but I feel like as a photographer for many years, to struggle and learn the ins and outs of photography, and whether it's analog, whether it's digital, and doing so many photo shoots, I feel that I finally am confident enough that I feel I should own one. But still, I felt like an imposter, and I'm really thankful for my friends who do photography because they've reassured me that I shouldn't feel like an imposter, that it's just a camera at the end of the day. But at the same time, they feel that I deserve to own one, own the camera that I've always wanted. And so when I was out there in Tokyo, I was going around different camera stores with Phil, and I was like converting prices in USD because I don't know yen. And I just wanted to know if it was worth it to go get it there, or else should I just buy it off on eBay or something like that. And at first I was seeing prices around $4,000 to $3,000 USD, and that's just the camera body. And I don't own any Leica M lenses or any lenses that are compatible with the Leica. So it's like literally a fresh new start in getting all the gear for it. And that's like a big decision that I think people don't consider. It's not like you could just buy a camera and then call it a day. It's like if you're going to buy Canon, or you're gonna buy Sony or Nikon or things like that, you're gonna have to invest in all the other gear that is compatible with that brand. It's not like you could just put a different brand with another brand unless it's like compatible. So it was just all an investment altogether. And then, so here we go. This is a story. My friend Raphael, you guys might know him. He sent me weeks ago before my trip this post. And he said, if maybe you're in the area, you might be able to go visit Lucky's. I've never heard of the store, don't know anything, didn't know Tokyo camera style. And I just was like, okay, like if I'm in the area, then sure. And so after looking and browsing through a bunch of shops, I asked Phil, like, hey, like, is this store nearby? Can we check it out? And so we went, and I literally was so busy, like just taking photos, just trying to document that I was there, sending it to my friends, that Phil was the one who saw in the window, all the way in the back, like, hey, like, I think there's a Leica M6 that's like going for a good deal. And he said, oh, what type of colorway do you want? Like the titanium version or all black? And then I told him like I wanted all black, and it happened to be that. And thank God Phil talks and speaks Japanese. So that was like a good sign, because he could talk to the salesperson and, you know, tell them my concerns. And at the same time, I messaged Raphael and Chris Visser. I say Chris Visser because there's too many Chris in the world. Not that there's not enough Raphaels, but if you know what I mean. And I told them, you guys need to get on FaceTime. If you don't go on FaceTime, I'm not gonna buy this camera, legit. And so fortunately, Raphael got to go on FaceTime. He said it was like a big moment. And those two, they are the people that I really confide to when it comes to any camera advice I need. So they were going through the camera while Phil's like physically checking the camera. Raphael's like watching on FaceTime. And for me, I know technical stuff, but not to the extent as them. And I admire them so much for knowing. And I'm very, very thankful that I have them to be there as support to make sure I'm making the right decision. And when they gave the green light that everything seemed good to go, that it looked like it was like actually a fresh new Leica M6, I was very confident then to go get the camera. So I give the salesperson my credit card, and he said, we don't accept card, we accept cash. And I have cash, but it wasn't enough for the camera. So he says, oh, like there's a Family Mart, which is like a 7-Eleven, and you could withdraw money at the ATM. And I was like, can you withdraw like thousands of USD, like, or yen at least, like through an ATM? So we go, and the card has like a card limit. Like you're like, for example, you could only withdraw $1,000 through the ATM, and then you have to wait for the next day. So I was like, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do? What happened if someone ends up getting this camera if I let it go? And so Phil was so nice enough that he, with no hesitation, he just met me in person, even though despite we've spoken many times through video call or on text. He was very kind enough to lend me the rest of the money that I needed. And then we went back to Lucky's, and I ended up getting the Leica M6. And because I didn't have a lens for it, he had his Leica CL, and he let me borrow the lens that he had. And I got to try it out because he said, you're only here for a few days, and at least you could figure out if it's good or in working condition and things like that. And then if you needed to return it, you could just go back. So we were at Starbucks, literally checking out the camera, and I just couldn't believe it at that moment. I couldn't believe that I owned this camera. It just was very hard for me to believe. Super imposter syndrome again. And then we would walk around, and I would try and test the camera. Luckily, I brought 35mm film stock rolls, and then afterwards I learned that I did like 50mm on the camera. I already have an idea that I like 28. I don't own a 28mm lens yet, and so after I came back from my trip to Tokyo and came back to the US, I was very fortunate that I had friends like Raphael and Chris Visser who sent over a package where I got to try out the lens that now I own, which is a 35mm lens, and they gifted me a 50, and so I'm very, very, very fortunate for having friends that really support my whole investment in getting a Leica M6. I really couldn't believe it. And plus, Japan has tax-free when you spend a certain amount, so the amount that I paid for the camera actually lessened even more when I got the tax-free. So I really got a great deal on it. I couldn't believe it. And like I said, this is what I was talking about, meaning like I've always wanted something that was like naturally meant to be. I didn't want it to be forced. And the fact that I was able to get this camera by age 30, I felt like I really hit a milestone in my life, in my career, and everything just like followed afterwards with just in my career and in going to film festivals and things like that, and traveling the world. I just feel very blessed, and I just can't wait to share my story of how it's been having and owning a Leica M6 a year later. I'm anticipating putting that video out next year, and so far it's like getting a new toy and then you're getting accessories for it. So I'm still figuring out the ins and outs with what I like and what I dislike about the camera. And one thing that I haven't found on YouTube but is important life lesson of this camera that I learned is the battery. The battery has been pissing me off because I have a Leica M6, the classic version, not TTL, and I was always like, why is the battery always draining? And Phil suggested that I would take out the battery if I'm not using the camera, but I was like, that's just so annoying because like I would always have to do that in the beginning because that was what he advised and told me. But then I did research and I couldn't find a YouTube video on this until I found, just like on some random forum, that if you put your settings to bulb, that turns off the light meter on the Leica M6 Classic. And I didn't know for sure if that would actually work, but it did. And so now it's been saving a lot, because I was like, why is this battery always like draining? It's just like I just bought a fresh new battery and then it would die like in the same day. And I was like, I'm not even using it. And I've had cameras that shoot analog and they have a light meter and it doesn't die out like that. And so that also made me start thinking twice, like, should I still own this camera or should I sell it? And now that I learned that to treat the bulb setting as an off setting, it actually now made me feel better about owning this camera. That's probably my biggest complaint right now. But yeah, other than that, I'm still learning as I go with owning this camera, but I wanted to just share with you what my thoughts were and what it took to own this camera. And it like, for me, it's still surreal, but I'm really happy that I own one. I don't regret getting it, and it's just made me fall in love with 35mm again, because to be honest, that's not necessarily my favorite format. I prefer always medium format, but yeah, it made me like 35 again. So if you have any tips or advice or thoughts, or you want to share your story about when you got your first Leica camera, you can leave it in the comments down below. Thank you again for watching, and stay tuned till the next video. Sayonara. It's the end of the video, so don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, it will help me in the long run. Okay, bye.